But how can you ignore that giant green guy standing down there at the New York Stock Exchange? There's the bell. You saw and heard it on this Friday, June 19th, 2009. Apparently, that's a guy from a kid's TV show, and I think he's perfect. Take a look at how the equity markets settled in, or how they are settling into this close. The S&P 500 still showing, holding on the gains at the end of the day, at the end of the week, about 0.3% the gain there to 921. Take a look at the Dow. It is down about 0.25% at the end of this Friday, 85.35 the level there. And the Nasdaq holding on to gains of more than 1% because of, partially at least, the moves in Microsoft. Here you see 1827.5 the last trade there. Now, tech and financial stocks leading the way higher today. Here you see the S&P 500 Infotech Index up 1.2%. The financial index up 1.7%. Telecoms and utilities were the biggest decliners. And the utilities index, we've been talking about this a lot with Adam Johnson. They had the biggest gain in short interest last week as well. Up 1.2%. A lot of people, though, playing those stocks because of their dividend return. Here you see the S&P Telecom Services Index down also more than 1%. Now, let's go back down to the New York Stock Exchange. Chris Valerio is patiently and loyally standing by, waiting for us to come to her. Chris, how can you how do you sum up the end of this trading day?
Well, I'm going to say I'm not the green monster, okay? First off.
Absolutely not.
That rang the closing bell. Well, we're going to wrap it up this way. We are down on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, 17 points. We are higher on the S&P 500. But the one thing I do want to point out is that we closed the first week out of losses in 5 weeks for that S&P 500. So certainly some big losses on that front, or at least some losses that we haven't experienced in quite a while. Also, financial stocks closing the week out. Again, first time in 5 weeks that they've seen losses. Let's talk a little bit about the support stories of the day, though, because actually financials were among that support story, as were consumer discretionary stocks and technology stocks. Now, we heard Matt kind of go over this. Microsoft, certainly the catalyst behind those tech stocks at its highest since October. Goldman Sachs coming out, adding the software maker to its conviction buy list. Matt, I'm going to interrupt myself for a second just to explain a little bit of the activity that we're seeing. It is, of course, expirations, quadruple witching. So you have a little more activity at the close that you tend to have. Now, normally the guys are out having a beer by this hour at 4:02. But as you can see, a little more activity. You have options expiration. So that's one of the reasons you've seen some of the activity here. I want to get back, though. You want to say something there?
Well, you know, the Germans say kein Bier vor 4, which means you can have a beer after 4 o'clock, and I think it makes sense, especially on a Friday.
Especially on a Friday. Long week, too. Really long week. So wanted to mention, aside from technology stocks, one of the things that helped us out were those consumer discretionary stocks. We did have Carnival, remember, kind of a continuation of things here. Carnival coming out saying that profit beat estimates yesterday. Today, Wachovia coming out, raising that stock to an outperform. So people at least going on vacations as they head into this summertime. And banks, of course, we can't forget them. They got a boost. JP Morgan coming out and saying that, you know what, it's going to cost them less than some analysts had estimated to pay back those government funds, and investors certainly liking the sound of that. Now, did mention that options expiration have been all over the place, kind of like this market today, but I want to mention again, it is, we had index futures expire, stock futures expire, you had index options and stock options all expire. So a little bit of the activity that we saw. I have to mention volume, floor trading volume saw a big increase, but total volume, not as much. So still a little less than we might imagine. And Matt, one more thing I have for you before I leave. I've got the green monster in all his glory right there behind me for you.
Which green monster is that? That's not the Boston Red Sox green monster.
Okay, no, I'm calling it the green monster. That's probably not his real name.
You're just calling it the green monster, and you're his sidekick for the day. All right. Chris, thanks very much for that. We'll talk to you a little bit later.